emphasis on punishment in parenting actually worked, I believe we would be seeing far more parents describing their homes as calm and connected with kids who are growing in their ability and desire to listen and mature. What if the real problem isn't what our kids are doing, but what they believe about who they are? Hi, I'm Courtney McLean, and a couple of years ago I took a class by Steve Backlund called Culture of Empowerment for Parents, and it absolutely changed the way we thought about the beginning process of discipline in our home. Previous to this class, we were where many parents are, flying by the seat of our pants, doing the best that we could to love our kids and instruct them and teach them in the way they should go. However, there were many times we would feel really frustrated because we wouldn't feel like we were seeing the fruit of the work we were putting in or seeing the results of all the time we were spending correcting, teaching, and giving our kids consequences for poor behavior. Enter in Culture of Empowerment class, and it absolutely changed the way we talk to our kids about what they've done in relationship to who they are. When most of us consider how to address a child's behavior, we think about something they've done wrong and what they should do because of the thing that they've done wrong. Talk back, you have a consequence. Talk back again, an even bigger consequence. And you see how that mode of response not only escalates emotion, but it also can very much, and I have experienced this often, escalate behavior too. So we're seeing the opposite of what we want to have happen, and everyone is elevated. We also took a class from David Thomas, and it was all about responding, not reacting, and how that is such an important tool and skill to have and really take ownership of as a parent. Because then when your kid does something in this poor behavior category, you aren't responding with your emotion because you've learned how to regulate yourself. We'll talk about that. You've been able to then respond, not react, and therefore you can respond calmly to whatever they may choose to do. Another author I love, Janet Lansbury, calls it being unruffled by your child's behavior. So in that mode, talking back, consequence, do it again, bigger consequence, I completely understand that when our children behave in a way that is not ideal, we want to have boundaries, absolutely. Kids do need structure, but what I was missing so often in my parenting of the past was I was missing this humongous opportunity to shape identity and remind them of who they are. I think a lot of people would agree that behavior flows out of a belief about who we are. And so if a child hears things like, you are bad, you always do this, we've talked about this a lot and you're still doing it. Why are you doing this? Why did you do that? Why are you always fill in the blank? They start to associate themselves, even unconsciously, with that poor behavior and view themselves in light of that. So, I always do this. I am this way. My parents even tell me so. So, naturally, out of the overflow of that is the behavior that we don't want to see. But the opposite is also true. So, when we say, instead of, you are rude, we could say, that's not who you are. I know that you are loving. Could you try that again? I think that people hear that sometimes and think, oh, she's talking about giving second chances. We want to see obedience right away. And I would just say, I think all of us probably know an adult or ourselves have an experience where we have responded to someone in a way that was rude as our initial response. And if we had been given that's not who you are, can you try that again? We probably would have been more loving in what we said back the second time. We would have been regulated, we would have been calm. If adults need that still, how much more do our kids need an opportunity to self-correct some of the things they might do before we even get to the point where we need to address, yes, there is a time and a place for healthy consequences. Another pause to say there is no condemnation in Jesus and there is no shame. And so when you can take off that response mechanism that you might have of, oh, she's calling out something I should do differently, now I feel like I'm the worst, and instead say that is completely not true, and it's also so unhelpful. If you want to have a fruitful parenting experience, you have to be able to consider a different point of view and maybe see where there have been some areas that you haven't been walking in that way, receive that idea and give it a try. Momentum is a big focus we like to have in our home of what brings momentum. Shame doesn't bring momentum. Focusing on ourselves doesn't bring momentum. But being able to receive an idea and ask God if it is something we should apply and then do it, it just keeps things going. I'll give you 3 steps today to apply in responding to your kids when they do something that's not ideal. The first would be to pause punishment. Just take a pause and separate what just happened from who they are. Because step 2 would be to remind them of who they are. Remind them, you are loving. Can you try that again? You are a truth teller. Could you say that again? You are so patient. Can you show me that you can wait? And 3, yes, give them an opportunity to retry, to redo, to walk in alignment with who you just reminded them that they are. Neuroscience confirms that self-concept is formed by repeated spoken input. So it is true that what someone believes about themselves is absolutely connected to what is repetitively spoken about them and to them. And second, from a biblical perspective, we know the truth is that death and life are in the power of the tongue. And so I have a friend in our life who talks about the importance of, for every one correction conversation you're having with your kid about adjusting ways they're behaving or speaking, how much more important it is to have 10 affirming comments or conversations where you're seeing them just really be who they are. We have seen this prove very fruitful in our home. First of all, it just feels right. And I think there's something really holy to say about that. When something resonates with your spirit, wow, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what it's supposed to feel like to talk to my kids in a hard moment. This is what I want them to remember about hard moments in our home was my mom was calm, my dad was calm. They reminded me about who I was, and I tried again. And sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't work in terms of right away them correcting themselves, but many times over time, I have seen it work. This does not happen all the time for all of my kids. This doesn't happen all the time for myself or Drew, but it is our aim. And I believe that as we continue to pour into our kids with this foundation, we'll see the fruit of it. So if this helped you, hit subscribe. It's the foundation of our home to remember that the words that we speak matter. We want to be a place of speaking life. And if that's something that you want to, I just invite you to stick around because there's so much more to come.